Get that disgusting thing off our lake. That's what the HOA president shrieked as I slowly floated my houseboat onto the water. My lake, not hers, not the community's. Mine, smack in the middle of my ranch in rural Oregon. Before I could even anchor, she was already dialing 911 like I committed some federal offense. Within minutes, cop cars pulled in, HOA board members swarmed the shoreline like it was Normandy on D-Day, and suddenly, I was being accused of trespassing on water I legally own. According to them, it was community property. Before you hear the full story, please tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you care about real stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. According to me, well, things were about to get hilarious. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button if you believe in standing your ground, and drop your stay in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. All right, my name's Logan Barnes. I'm 45, with neatly kept salt and pepper hair and the sharp eyes of a guy who used to fix busted networks for a living before I ditched the rat race for good. I bought this beautiful, sprawling ranch to build handcrafted furniture, live peacefully, and sometimes float my homemade houseboat out to fish. The property came with a gorgeous natural lake, completely within my boundaries, and from day one, I made damn sure the water rights were airtight. I'd heard enough HOA horror stories to know better. I quietly dug through every dusty contract, old survey map, and HOA bylaw I could get my hands on. That's when I found it. A strange little clause buried deep in some old document. It made one thing clear. This lake? Mine. 100%. I kept that clause tucked away, my ace in the hole. My dad used to say, land with water is land worth keeping. I remembered him saying that as we fished in Louisiana when I was 12, truth flows like water, son. People try to control it, poison it, reroute it, but follow it long enough, it'll always lead to the real owner. I didn't get it back then, but when Tracy rolled up on her ridiculous little golf cart, barking about our lake, it all clicked. Tracy Caldwell, HOA president, 39, type A nightmare with an addiction to power. Rigid stance, permanent scowl, eyes like security cameras. She used to run another HOA complex until she got forced out over, you guessed it, abuse of power. Dodged the lawsuit, but came out even worse, obsessed with control and domination. She looked at me like I was some newcomer nobody. She wanted control over everything, even what didn't belong to her. I could tell from the moment I started grading a dirt road down to the lake for my boat launch and posted a small sign, private area, no trespassing. One sunny afternoon, as I painted my boat by hand, here comes Tracy, riding up like she's in some HOA-themed parade, logos on everything from her cart to her hat. She gets out, no hello, just starts measuring things like she's CSI, suburbia, muttering numbers, scanning every inch like she's going to find a buried body. Then she whips around and barks. Hey you, what are you doing with our lake? What's that sign? You do know this is under HOA jurisdiction, right? She had this giant notebook and started scribbling things like I was a criminal. Looked at my boat like it was a dead possum in her morning coffee. I stayed calm, explained the property lines, even handed her a copy of the land survey with boundary markers in black and white. She didn't care. She snorted, curled her lip, gave me the nastiest fake smile, and said, "You're new, so you probably don't know the rules. This is a community lake, outsider." Then she threw my documents. I had to chase them down as they flew into the wind. Felt like a sad slapstick scene from a sitcom. She promised fines, threats, and swore I'd never have peace. But here's the thing, she didn't know about my ace. I removed the sign, not out of fear, but to see her next move. Something about her arrogance told me she wasn't finished. And I was right. This wasn't just about rules or landscaping. This was about power. So I called Marcus, my real estate lawyer. He's 58, sharp as hell, silver goatee, calm voice. He helped me buy the ranch, and he remembered the clause. When I showed him the documents again, he grinned and said, "Logan, this might get fun." 2 days later, bang, bang, bang. 5 a.m. Tracy knocking on doors like some HOA Santa delivering misery. Attached to her new community bulletin, a $3,000 fine. Trespassing, disturbing the peace. And a photo of my houseboat with a caption underneath, disgusting object invading common space. Well, Tracy, you're about to learn what happens when the outsider owns the lake you're trying to steal. The photos she sent were clearly taken with some kind of telephoto lens, from different angles, too, like she'd been conducting surveillance on me for days. Tracy didn't stop there. She also fired off an email to every resident, attaching a video she'd secretly recorded of me taking down the private area sign near the lake. The subject line? Victory, troublemaker backs down. Yeah, real classy. But what Tracy didn't realize, not even for a second, was that I hadn't backed down at all. I was just getting started. I held that ridiculous violation letter in my hand, standing by the window. Outside, Tracy was strutting down the gravel path with that smug little smile on her face, probably off to hand out more HOA threats disguised as neighborhood notices. And in that moment, as her fake grin hovered in the frame of my window, I felt a hard mix of emotions. You hurt, yeah. Angry, but also something deeper. Determination. So you want to play this game, Tracy? I muttered to myself, my jaw tightening, eyes locked on her back. Fine, let's play. But don't laugh too soon. The show's just getting started. That chapter ended with me walking right back down to the lake and replanting the same private area. No trespassing sign. Only this time, I added something extra in thick black permanent marker underneath, and always will be. Then I got to work. I started sending legal documents to my attorney Marcus Thorne, a sharp, calm guy with a silver goatee and decades of experience in land and real estate law. That email, that letter, that public humiliation, that was my line in the sand. The gloves were off. That same night, I sat on the porch with a cold beer in hand, watching the moonlight ripple across the lake. My dad's voice echoed in my mind. Don't let snakes take what's yours. I picked up the phone. Marcus, it's time. From that moment forward, Marcus and I launched a full investigation, digging deep into old property documents, land records, and the area's entire development history. We weren't just looking to defend. We were preparing to bury every one of Tracy's claims under hard, legal truth. I also began quietly recording all of Tracy's little harassment stunts, building a file thick enough to put her behavior on trial if it came to that. That HOA letter and her public shaming made one thing very clear. Tracy wasn't going to stop. She was like a dog with a bone. But the thing is, I was about to become the bone she choked on. At first, I felt cornered. I won't lie. There were moments when the pressure got heavy, when the endless HOA calls, the warnings, the loudspeaker announcements made me question whether I'd made the right choice buying this land. Tracy escalated things fast. She slapped me with more made-up violations. Yard lights staying on too late, my old pickup truck ruining the landscape. And then, without any shame, she installed security cameras that pointed directly at my ranch. Her voice, always this nasal, bossy tone, started blaring through the neighborhood from the HOA's PA system, reminding everyone about rules and calling out people she claimed were sabotaging community peace. Neighbors winced every time they heard her. It was like living next to a dictator with a bullhorn. One day, she even marched up to my gate, holding that massive notebook like it was a holy book of laws. Logan Barnes, your truck's parked in the wrong spot. I'm recording everything. You can't escape. She shouted like she was arresting me. The irony? My truck was parked on my own land. But logic had never been her strong suit. It felt like constant psychological warfare, calls, cameras, broadcasts. There were quiet nights when I sat by the window, just thinking, wondering if maybe I should just pack up and go. Maybe peace was worth more than pride. I could understand how someone less stubborn might have caved. But then I noticed something. I wasn't the only target. Other residents were starting to suffer too. She'd find someone over a mailbox being the wrong shade of beige, or a car being parked 6 inches too far left. That was my breaking point. It wasn't just about me anymore. If I walked away, she'd keep going, and the next guy might not have a Marcus Thorne or the will to fight. So, Marcus kept digging through dusty law books and archive files, while I focused on tech, pulling up old zoning maps, analyzing boundary lines, even installing my own security cameras to document her nonstop harassment. And the footage? Let's just say if Netflix needed a villain documentary, Tracy was handing me gold on a platter. Then we hit gold, real gold. Buried deep in dusty HOA files from 1960, we found it. Legal documentation showing the lake was fully contained within private property boundaries. No public easement. No HOA access. No shared anything. The lake was legally, indisputably mine. No loopholes. No backdoor technicalities. The language was old school and stiff, but crystal clear. Here's the kicker. I already knew this. I'd seen it when I bought the land. But now we had it officially certified. Stamped. Signed. Every square inch of that water was mine. Completely untouchable by HOA rules. And best of all, Tracy didn't know. For all her bragging about knowing community law, she'd never seen this clause buried in the HOA's origin documents. Marcus and I printed that document large, bold, and waterproof, wrapped it under a tarp like a secret weapon. One day soon, we'd pull the cover off and end the charade, once and for all. I looked over at Marcus across his office table. He glanced up from the papers, and that slow, victorious smile spread across his face. "Logan," he said, voice calm but full of fire, "we didn't just find a rough diamond. We found a whole damn diamond mine. She doesn't know who she's messing with." That's what Marcus said, leaning back in his leather chair, his fingers steepled like a man already calculating 10 moves ahead. You could see it in his eyes. This wasn't just a legal case to him anymore. It was a mission. That chapter closed with me sitting by my window that evening, quietly watching the lake, while my houseboat sat gently bobbing under the soft orange glow of sunset. I smiled, not out of arrogance, but from a deep, steady confidence. Because what sat on that water wasn't some disgusting boat like Tracy claimed. It was a loaded time bomb, and the irony, she'd be the one to pull the trigger. The anticipation was eating at me. But I reminded myself, good things come to those who wait. And I'd waited long enough. With undeniable legal evidence in hand, and a little ace I'd been hiding since Chapter 2, I made my first real move. I floated the houseboat right back onto the lake. It was a direct challenge, clear, bold, and impossible to ignore. I knew it would get under Tracy's skin. I knew it would rattle the HOA's illusion of control. And sure enough, it brought exactly what I expected, flashing lights and police cruisers. But I wanted that. I wanted to see her reaction when I stood firm in my rights. And, oh, she did not disappoint. That old clause we'd uncovered, buried in the HOA's ancient bylaws, confirmed that the lake was completely within my property lines. No community ownership. No shared easement. Just mine. That discovery didn't just boost my confidence. It lit a fuse inside me. I wasn't just going to sit on that evidence. I was going to use it. Prove it. Loud and clear. So, on a crisp, beautiful Saturday morning, I hired a professional transport team with a heavy-duty crane. The kind of operation that turns heads. Slowly, methodically, they lifted and lowered my large houseboat back onto the water. The mechanical groan of the crane and the rumble of the engine echoed like thunder over the hills. And just like that, I lit a signal flare. Neighbors peeked through blinds. People wandered out onto porches. And then came the main act, Tracy. She came charging like she'd been shot out of a cannon. I swear, I've never seen someone in orthopedic shoes move that fast in my life. Her face had gone pale, completely drained of color, and that carefully styled blonde bob of hers whipped wildly in the wind like she'd just stepped into a storm. Her whole body flailed as she stormed up the drive, arms flapping like a goose set on fire. "You're killing the community," she screamed, voice high and frantic, like I'd just sunk her personal battleship. And I stood there calm, steady, grounded in truth, because deep down, I knew the real storm had only just begun. I honestly thought she was about to collapse right there from running out of breath. But no, Tracy whipped out her phone, started filming, and simultaneously called 911, accusing me of trespassing on community property, endangering residents, and even threatening the environment. She added her signature flair to the drama by calling my houseboat a giant garbage can floating on our precious water. Her accusations were so over the top, they felt like something ripped straight from a bad daytime soap opera. Meanwhile, a small crowd of curious neighbors had gathered. Phones were up. Some were clearly live-streaming the whole circus. It wasn't long before sirens started howling in the distance, getting louder by the second. And then, like clockwork, Lieutenant John Peterson pulled up. A 54-year-old guy with the tired look of someone who'd seen more neighborhood drama than he cared to admit. A younger officer trailed behind him, face screaming, "Why am I even here?" From Peterson's slow walk and exasperated sigh, I could tell this wasn't his first Tracy rodeo. He already looked like he was bracing for one of her performances. And right on cue, she darted toward him like a missile, ranting nonstop, her words flying faster than a caffeinated auctioneer. She was shouting into the mic on his uniform, as if volume would somehow make her claims more legit. It was wild. And me? I just leaned against the truck, arms crossed, calm as a lake in winter. Every now and then, I'd crack a half smile when her accusations got too ridiculous to ignore. I let her go on. Sometimes, the best strategy is to let your enemy dig their own grave. And Tracy? She was digging with both hands. The more she screamed, the more the lieutenant's eyes narrowed in confusion. You could see he was trying to figure out why this was even labeled an emergency. When it was finally my turn, I stepped forward without a word and handed him a neat folder, organized, complete, airtight. Inside was everything he needed: maps, deed records, law citations, and survey boundaries. He flipped it open, skimmed through, checked some things on his tablet, and then came the moment. Lieutenant Peterson exhaled hard, like he'd just unloaded a 100-pound weight off his chest. "Mr. Barnes owns the lake," he said. "This isn't a police matter." Tracy's jaw practically hit the gravel. At first, Peterson had looked skeptical, probably because Tracy was dressed like an executive and talked like a prosecutor. I could tell he thought I might be some rule-breaking outsider trying to play games. But as he cross-referenced every document, his expression shifted from cautious to surprised to completely done. The neighbors around us started murmuring. And then came a mic drop. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said sharply, turning to her with professional annoyance, "according to the evidence Mr. Barnes has provided and our verification, this lake is entirely within his legal ownership. There's nothing here for us to act on. Calling 911 over a civil property matter is a misuse of emergency services." Tracy just froze. Her face went from red to green in seconds. Her lips moved, but no words came out. It was like watching an engine seize up. I swear, close-up footage of her expressions could have gone viral in a heartbeat. People around us started chuckling. Phones were recording her every twitch. And right behind them, my houseboat calmly floated onto the water, smooth, quiet, steady. Like a physical reminder that the game had changed. I nodded respectfully to the officers, thanked them, and then gave Tracy a long, meaningful glance. Not gloating, just let her know, "You really thought you could win this?" She stood there seething, fists clenched so hard her knuckles had gone snow white. That chapter ended with me walking over to the community bulletin board. I slowly pulled down the tarp that covered the full neighborhood map. An official land survey with clear arrows and boundary lines showing exactly what I owned. A small crowd began gathering, whispering among themselves, realization dawning on their faces. But Tracy wasn't done. Humiliated, desperate, she doubled down. She sent out emergency HOA meeting invitations with subject lines in all caps and bold font. "Urgent threat to our community," complete with exclamation marks and panic-inducing phrasing. The email painted me as some kind of criminal mastermind who'd infiltrated their quiet suburb. At the meeting, Tracy arrived with a full slideshow about my boat, like it was a federal crime scene. She had arrows, bold captions, environmental hazard warnings, and slides claiming my boat was lowering property values. Her allies on the board jumped in with outlandish suggestions, thousands in fines, calling environmental agencies, even using nets to drag my boat out of the lake. The hostility in the room was thick. Some people looked at me like I'd vandalized a church. Others just stayed silent, unsure of what to believe. I sat there quietly, taking notes, occasionally shaking my head in disbelief. Some of the suggestions were so absurd, I almost laughed. But beneath that, I felt a deep disappointment. A community manipulated by one person's hunger for control. When they finally let me speak, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just calmly walked to the front and projected the map onto the big screen. Then I pulled out the notarized deed records, the county stamp surveys, and most importantly, the original HOA clause everyone had forgotten, clearly stating the HOA had no jurisdiction over my lake. The room went dead silent. I read the clause aloud, slow and clear, pointing with a laser to the lines that proved my case. That's when a man in his 70s raised his hand. "Son, I've lived here since this place was nothing but dirt roads. I remember when that clause was written." That cracked something open. People started murmuring. One woman whispered, "We always suspected she was bluffing, just no one had the guts to fight her." It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of them. You could feel the mood shift. Eyes turned toward Tracy, no longer full of admiration, but of suspicion, doubt. Tracy tried to interrupt, claiming the documents were outdated or irrelevant. But I kept steady, calm, and let her unravel herself. The more she spoke, the more desperate she looked. When I finished, the room stayed silent for a beat, and then, from the back, someone started clapping. Another joined, and soon, the room erupted into applause. "Logan, Logan," some chanted. People came up to thank me, to shake my hand, to say finally. I left that meeting with a smile of quiet relief. Not pride, but peace. Like I'd untied a knot that had choked this neighborhood for years. Tracy stayed behind, fists clenched, eyes burning holes into my back. I could feel it without turning around. She had finally realized this battle wouldn't be easy. The final image of that chapter? Tracy screaming in her phone, pacing, furious, telling her lawyer, "I won't stop until that bastard cries and apologizes to me." Her voice still carried that same sharpness, but now there was something different buried beneath it. Panic, like someone realizing too late that the ground under their feet was starting to crack. After the public disaster that was the HOA meeting, Tracy had no graceful exit left, and you could see her spiraling into pure desperation. So she did what desperate people often do. She went for the nuclear option. She filed a lawsuit against me, throwing in everything she had left, hoping the court would do what she no longer could, scare me into silence. But what she didn't know was that I'd been holding a trump card all along, one that had nothing to do with lake rights and everything to do with the HOA's dirty financial secrets. Secrets she thought no one was watching. But someone was. That someone was Richard Davis, a retired accountant who'd quietly been keeping an eye on the HOA's books for months. He didn't like what he saw in the quarterly reports and started digging. What he found turned out to be a game changer. That night, just past 2 a.m., as I scrolled through yet another wave of Tracy's unhinged posts, calling me a fraud, a threat, a menace, I was ready to log off and walk away. But then, I got the file. A voice memo. Tracy's own voice, calm but commanding, giving clear instructions to transfer HOA funds into a private account under the guise of emergency expenses. No documentation, no board approval, nothing. It was a smoking gun. I smiled, not out of malice, but out of clarity. It was over for her, and she didn't even know it yet. I forwarded the recording to Marcus, my lawyer, who had already been preparing our legal response to her bogus lawsuit. We decided to hold the recording back, let her dig her own hole a little deeper. Meanwhile, I started quietly meeting with trusted neighbors, those she'd harassed, those who'd stood with me, laying the groundwork for what was coming. When we finally appeared in court, Tracy and her attorney looked scattered, disorganized. They clung to the same HOA bylaws I'd already destroyed publicly and legally, as if reading them louder would somehow change the facts. Marcus sat calmly beside me, listening, occasionally jotting notes. Then, our turn came, and we dropped the hammer. Marcus requested a surprise witness. Richard Davis stood, elderly but confident, and laid out his findings in clear, quiet detail. Then we played the recording. Tracy's voice echoed through the courtroom, smooth, smug, and damning. You could see the color drain from her face as she realized what was happening. She tried to interrupt, lunging for the mic, but the judge shut her down fast. Judge Eleanor Vance, a no-nonsense woman with decades of courtroom experience, silenced the room with a few firm bangs of her gavel. After reviewing the audio, the paperwork, and Richard's audit trail, she did what we hoped. She froze the HOA's lawsuit against me, ordered a full investigation into Tracy's financial handling, and barred her from accessing or managing HOA funds indefinitely. Tracy stumbled out of that courtroom like a shell of the self-righteous woman who walked in. I sent the recording to a few trusted neighbors and a local reporter who'd been following the HOA drama. Within hours, word spread like wildfire. Tracy doubled down online, creating fake accounts, posting hate-filled rants, even trying to threaten people who supported me. But it didn't work. Residents began pushing back, publicly and loudly. Her lies unraveled fast. A meme of her frozen, muted Zoom face became the most shared image in the neighborhood's history. Screenshots, stories, and videos started pouring out. Neighbors she'd silenced for years now felt emboldened to speak up. And they did. At one final online HOA meeting, after I'd quietly been voted in as interim chair, Tracy tried to shout over everyone again. I muted her mid-rant. The silence was poetic. Her mouth kept moving, but no one could hear her. That clip? Viral gold. By the time it was over, she was utterly alone. The fake accounts were exposed. The financial crimes were being investigated by the district attorney. And the community that had once been too afraid to speak out, they were done being afraid. I didn't just win, I watched a neighborhood stand up for itself. When Tracy finally left, it was in the dead of night, like a defeated general retreating without honor. No goodbye, no apology, just a moving truck and a for sale sign. I found the torn pieces of a handwritten apology letter scattered in her yard. The neighbors and I picked them up, read the half-formed thoughts, and quietly tossed them into the trash bin, right where they belonged. I gave a small nod, a smile forming as I looked around. Tracy was gone. But more importantly, so was the shadow she had cast. The fear, the control, the way she'd split the community into silence and suspicion. All of it had lifted, and what took its place wasn't just water and houseboats. It was something far bigger, freedom. This victory wasn't just mine. It belonged to every neighbor who had ever been afraid to speak, every family who just wanted peace, every voice that had been talked over. I stood there, finishing my story from the dock of my own marina, the sun glinting off the calm lake as my houseboat rocked gently in the breeze. Then I turned, facing you directly. In the inn, the lake? It was always mine. And their $2 million marina? Well, that's mine now, too. Sometimes, life has a strange way of dishing out justice. Clean, simple, and long overdue. So what's the takeaway? Never mess with a retired engineer, especially not one with a houseboat, a binder full of legal receipts, and a community that's damn tired of being pushed around. The camera slowly pulled back, revealing the quiet water, the peaceful dock, neighbors smiling and chatting freely again. The HOA reign was over. Still sitting there thinking about everything that just happened? Yeah, us too. Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from, because at Speedy Stories, we've got more wild tales coming your way.